So tools I used, vice grips for holding this steel wool, basic plumbing solder from Home Depot, focus, oh whatever, here's what it is, screwdriver just for holding the work. There's my battery acid, which I just pulled out of that 5-year-old battery, 3-year-old, whatever. Let's get to it. Yes, I see the plumbing said electrical, but it's lead free just like everything else they had. This is a good time to go over some of the safety stuff. It took a little while for the solder to stick to this. Be careful with battery acid. If you can't wear a respirator, have plenty of ventilation. Make sure you do not get any of that stuff just even near your face. I got a tiny whiff of this the first time I tried it. Woke up at 4 a.m. feeling like my lungs were half full of phlegm. It's not something to be stupid with. This is just some aluminum heatsink that I pulled out of a server years ago. I originally tried doing it with the anodization on there, but that was taking forever. It would have eventually worked, but I just took an angle grinder to it and sanded it down. This would be easier with proper tools like a vice grip and a bench vise and a torch, but I don't have those things laying around, so I did it the hard way. I don't know what alloy of aluminum this is. Other alloys might be easier. Use what I had laying around. I originally wanted to do this, figure out how to do this for modding GPU heatsinks, graphics cards for computers. Because unlike motherboards and CPUs, there's not really a standard mount for coolers. Some of the same stuff in a similar generation might have the same screw holes, but you want to be able to cool the video RAM, which is around the GPU die, the voltage regulator. Those are always different. So the easiest way to do it is to figure out how to DIY it. Once I figured out how to do it, I took the voltage regulator heatsink from my graphics card, cut all the fins off, cut a block of aluminum to fit on it to get it high enough for a cooler to fit without hitting the capacitors and things around it. Soldered that to the original heatsink, and then just took a heatsink that I pulled out of something looked like it was made in 2000, early 2000s, threw some thermal compound on there and zip tied it around the GPU, and it works fine. You just gotta wait on a copper plate to come in the mail. It's going to go over the GPU die. My big CPU cooler is going on top of that, and then thermal pads around the VRAM. And since the GPU die is a good bit higher, I don't want to use thick pads on the VRAM. Probably see if I can set up some sort of jig to bend it properly so I can use the original thermal pads. Because the whole goal of putting all this work into it is for everything to run nice and cool. And getting a copper plate and then putting some thick pads in there, like, that's kind of counterproductive. If I can do that well on this card, I should be able to do it well on any card, because this thing is somewhat old and pulls 275 watts. New cards with the same performance pull maybe 90 watts. It's a R9 390. I'll leave a link in the description of the body panel leading, where I got the idea for this technique from. Some professional old guy working on some old hot rod. You can get an idea of how I approach this mentally or something. I don't know. Learn from the same thing I learned from. They used some pre-mixed solder paste that apparently had lead and muriatic acid in it. I just used plumbing solder and battery acid and got it to work. trouble this time.
What are you trying to do again?
Solder this piece of aluminum. Yeah, it's finally starting to stick.
That's working on the attic.
Yeah, it's nowhere near done yet.
The what?
The sink, toilet, and a bunch of carpeting done. And some painting still. Dave still got to tile the floor. There it is. Once you get a good spot of connection like that, it's pretty easy to spread out. Typically so far when I've tried it anyway. Had to cool the vice grips off, they were getting hot. I really should be wearing gloves and shit for this.
Yeah, apartments don't charge too much more for utilities and stuff. And then sometimes they take care of some of the utilities for free. I'd rather just wait and get something else.
That larger heatsink is the first attempt. I originally had the whole thing tin, but maybe because it's such a thin layer, maybe the aluminum underneath was able to oxidize, so I didn't get full coverage there, but it worked out well enough to hold these two pieces together. sure I give enough time for the heat to soak up through the solder and the other piece of aluminum so they're all good and hot and they flow well. I guess an easy way to test since this is just a demonstration. Yeah, it's good and hot. Press them together, a little oozes out, and wait for it to cool. Pretty easy to see I did not have full coverage, but we'll get an idea how sturdy that horrible solder gel is.
Actually, another pack.
Alright.
It was limited to. So.
Well, hope that helped out. Have a good day.